Can you hear me now? Okay, so I apologize for that. I'm so sorry. It seems like you all did not hear anything I said earlier, um, which is amusing and fine, and we'll just roll with it. So that's absolutely fine. But please do continue to let me know. Um, and it looks like I am audible now. Is that right? Okay. All right. So hopefully we're back on track. An invitation, again, an invitation here to settle into our seats, to find that comfortable right seat for us, that which allows us to be at ease and at the same time to be alert and present. So it's finding that balance between comfort and perhaps challenging ourselves a little bit to be more alert and awake. An invitation here to, if we haven't already done so, to close the eyes or perhaps to soften the gaze, whatever is more comfortable for us. If we're softening the gaze, an invitation to choose a focal point, a fixed point, perhaps something on our computers or something in the room around us that we can fix our gaze on as we soften it, perhaps half closing the eyes. Again, these are technical points or technicalities. The essence, the key is just finding what works for us, what allows us to be as free of external distractions as possible and as present as possible. We'll begin, as we generally do, with the ringing of the bell, and then we'll take 3 deep breaths in together, holding the breath, and then releasing the breath together. Just as a matter of what seems to work for a lot of us is timing those breaths. So perhaps breathing in for about 4 beats, holding the breath for about 4 beats, and then releasing the breath for slightly longer, perhaps about 6 beats. We'll do this again 3 times. Breathing in deeply through the nose or softly between the lips. Holding and out. Again, in, hold, and release. Last time, in, holding, and exhaling. Now allowing the breath to settle and find its own pace. Continuing to breathe with intention, noticing the breath, with awareness of the breath, but also with ease. Letting go of any tendency we may notice to control the breath, to manipulate the breath. if we find ourselves, as we sometimes do, lapsing into that performative side, we can just recognize it and free ourselves from that. We don't need to perform any kind of artificial or imagined idea of meditative breathing. We just need to allow the breath to find its own pace. Perhaps taking a moment here to, with just a little bit more intention, commit to noticing the breath, to being an observer of the breath. Continuing to pay attention to the breath, to rest our awareness on the breath. This is not analyzing the breath or judging it in any way. Just noticing it with intention and interest, maybe even with curiosity. I like to think of noticing the breath as something like zooming a camera lens in for a close-up shot. Like taking a mental photo, a portrait shot of the breath. When we zoom in to focus crisply on the subject of our photo, whatever is in the background, it naturally blurs out. We don't need to make a separate endeavor to blur out the background. It just happens through our attention and our focus on what we want to place in the foreground. In this moment, this simple and yet precious act of breathing, this is what we're choosing to foreground, to zoom into, to focus into. If we're finding that naturally the background stuff, the sounds or sights or sensations of whatever else is going on, wherever we are, if we find that that's naturally blurring out, just allowing that to happen. If we find that it's challenging and our mind's eye wants to focus in on all of those other things, we can just, with a little bit more intention, lean into the breath, allowing that background to soften and blur out in its own time. If we notice our thoughts, our minds becoming restless or distracted, we can simply recognize this and bring our thoughts, our minds, our awareness back to this moment, this breath. If perhaps there are other focal points that are a part of our practice, along with the breath, we can bring the mind, the awareness back to those focal points. For some of us, that might mean a mantra or sacred sound. We can silently or quietly repeat our mantra or whatever sound vibration we may have as part of our practice, and bring the mind, the awareness back to it. If that's not a part of our practice, just the simple act of bringing the mind back to the breath, it serves that same purpose. We allow our minds, our thoughts to go so many places throughout the day, to jump back into the past or to peer into the future. but just for a few moments more, giving ourselves the gift of letting the mind rest, letting the thoughts rest, letting our awareness rest in the present moment. In this breath that is animating us, that is giving us life in this moment. In these final moments of our virtual meditation sit together, if we'd like to, we can just for a few more moments, just sharpen that focus, the way we sharpen the focus of the camera lens. Leaning in just a little bit more intentionally, a little bit more deeply into being present, into this breath, this moment. We'll close our meditation now with one final deep breath in, holding, and then on the exhale, we can chant or simply silently listen to the sacred sound of Om. Breathing in deeply. Om. Gently and with ease and comfort, we can open our eyes or widen our gaze, returning our awareness, our consciousness, our intention to our external surroundings, to our gathering today. So I want to thank you all for joining. We generally have a wisdom teaching following the meditation, but I think because of some technical difficulties in the beginning, we lost a little bit of time, and I just want to be aware of everyone's time commitments. So instead of beginning the wisdom teaching this week, we will leave it for next week and perhaps give a little bit more time for that aspect of our Shanti in Place program next week. But for now, I want to just hold a little bit of time. If anyone has any questions, comments, reflections, anything anyone would like to share as far as how this experience was, or anything in your meditation practice, we can just hold a couple of minutes for that. So I want to invite you all, if you'd like to, I think you can unmute. If there are any questions or comments, or if anyone would just like to share a little bit of your own experience with this practice, you're welcome to do so now. Okay, well, I hope that the silence is a good one and it's a reflective one, and it's not, I hope it doesn't mean that my audio is cutting out and you can't hear me again. So perhaps if someone would be so kind as to, in the chat box, just confirm that, okay, great, I am audible. And perhaps everyone is just in a little bit of a reflective state, and that's absolutely fine. I'm looking at some of the comments in the chat box, and I also feel like this was a kind of a calming session, and perhaps that's what we needed. I know for me, sometimes I can find myself, especially when unexpected challenges arise, like tech delays and things like that, I can find myself going into the space of being a little frenetic and a little hurried, trying to make up for lost time. And so I think even for myself today, I just wanted to intentionally try to cultivate a little bit more of a calming space. So I'm glad that that's resonating with folks. Yeah, much needed pauses and busy days are precious. So thank you all for being a part of that and for lending one another our energy. We create calming presences together. We bring, we get nourished by the calming presences of others, and we contribute that to one another. So thank you all for being a part of this. Have a wonderful rest of your day and rest of your week to come. And we will, divinity willing, gather again next Tuesday for our next Shanti in Place session. Thank you all so much. Namaste.